So everyone who attends today is going to get a copy of the webinar as well as a link to the recording on our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions as we go along to the webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat. There is a chat function there where you can just type things into it, or you can wait till the end. We'll have time for questions as well. So let's get started here. So thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Boris Hertzlet. I'm the program manager for the Guam APEX Accelerator. This slide tells you a little bit about what we do. We provide one-on-one counseling as well as group workshops and webinars for anybody that's going after a government contract. So if you're going after a federal government contract or a local government contract, we are here to assist you. We do not assist with private sector contracts. So we are funded by a grant from the Department of War, Office of Small Business Programs. The University of Guam is our host for our grant. So we have offices over at the University of Guam in the School of Business and Public Administration. I'm in room 117, and Victoria, our procurement counselor, is in room 116. Some of the highlights of our program, we have over 700 active clients that are 700 plus active clients that are basically actively looking for government contracts. We have over 2,000 in our database. And FY25, those clients went over $600 million in government contracts and subcontracts. And we've helped a bunch of clients get HubZone certified. That's a small business certification that we can assist with. I'll talk more about those in a second here. And then we also have our resource partners that we work with. We are a member of NAPEX, so we're just one APEX accelerator among 90 plus offices across the nation. And we all have our coverage area. So Guam covers Guam, and we also assist with the CNMI. But basically, we have an alliance that we are a part of, and we can go to that alliance, find out what's going on with the latest and greatest in government contracting, and share that information with our clients. And which we do that a lot with our Facebook and LinkedIn pages, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. Then we also work quite a bit with the SBDC. That's the Small Business Development Center. They are like the boots on the ground for the SBA. So if you are starting a business or you want to expand your business and you need to put a business plan together that you need to take to a bank or a credit union so you can get a loan or a line of credit, or maybe you need some QuickBooks training or even some HR training, anything related to developing your business, go see the folks over at the SBDC. We do not assist with business development. We strictly focus on government contracting. And so we work with the Guam SBDC, which is located also at the University of Guam inside the School of Business and Public Administration. And then we also work with the CNMI SBDC. So they have an office on the three main islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. So go see those folks for anything related to business development. And then the SBA we work with quite a bit. Like I mentioned, the HubZone program, that is an SBA program. So they have these small business certifications that you can get in different categories. HubZone, 8A, Woman-Owned, Service-Disabled Veteran. They also have something known as a mentor protege program where usually a large mentor teams up with a small protege and they can go after small business contracts. So if you want to get those kind of certifications or get involved in the mentor protege, we can assist with all of that. Going back to the types of assistance or how our program works, it's basically if you're brand new to federal contracting, we'll sit down with you, or government contracting, we'll sit down with you and find out what products and services you're selling. We'll figure out which government agencies are purchasing those products and services. And then we will get you, if you want to go on the federal side of things, we'll get you registered in SAM. That's a database of anybody who wants to be a federal contractor. Then you need to be registered in that database. Once you're all registered in SAM, then we can help you find opportunities. Those are also posted in SAM. We can show you how to look for those things. And then once you find something you're interested in, we can help you review the opportunity or the solicitation as it's called. And then we can help you with your proposal or your quote. We obviously can't tell you how to price things and we can't write your entire proposal for you, but we can give you tips and suggestions on what to include, what not to include in your proposal. And then win or lose, we can help you with the debrief process. In the federal system, you are entitled to a debrief, and that is where the federal government will tell you the strengths and weaknesses of your proposal, which is always a great thing to know, especially if you want to continue on pursuing government contracts on the federal side of things. They will do that for you, but you do need to request a debrief, and so we'll show you how that process works. So basically, start to finish of the government procurement process. That's what we're here to assist with. All our services are free of charge. It's all paid for with your tax dollars, so please take advantage of our services. How you can contact us, there's our website. That's probably the best place to go. If you're new to government contracting or if you know someone who wants to get into government contracting, please direct them to our website, guamapex.com. That puts you basically on our sign up list. We'll review you, make sure you're able to use our services, and then we'll add you to basically our database, and then you'll get on our email list. Every Friday, we send out an email that talks about companies that have won contracts. We talk about the latest things going on in government contracting. We talk about upcoming webinars and events, online and in person, that you can attend. And then we also talk about what opportunities are out there, what solicitations are out there for you to bid on. So here's our contact information. We also have our Facebook and LinkedIn pages, so please follow those pages. Again, we share the latest and greatest happening with government contracting. And then we have our YouTube channel. If you just go to YouTube and type in Guam Apex, you'll see all our videos. And if you missed a webinar, no problem. Just go to the YouTube channel. You can watch it right there on the webinar. And we always update our webinars on the YouTube channel with the latest version. So, for example, if we do this Government of Guam like we're doing today, if we do this again in 6 months, this one will get deleted and we'll put the newest one up there. So you always have the latest information on our channel. All right. So if there's any questions, like I said, as we go along here, please feel free to type them in the chat. If not, save them till the end and we'll have time for some questions. And today we're going to talk about Government of Guam procurement. So let's go. So just want to share something about Government of Guam procurement. This is a note from the public auditor. And this is a while ago, actually, but basically it kind of reinstating the purpose of GovGuam procurement. Why do we have to have rules and regulations when it relates to Government of Guam procurement? Well, I think it's fairly obvious why we have to. It's taxpayer money that's being used to purchase things, and that money needs to be hopefully spent in a fiscal conservative way, basically buying things that only that we need, not that wish list things and things like that. So basically, I'll just read some highlights here of this. The fundamental objective of government procurement is to provide departments with the goods and services they need to carry out their duties efficiently and effectively. So they shouldn't be, buying any extra things, or just the things they basically need to do their jobs is what they should be buying. And the goods and services should be of the right quality. They should be of the right quantity. They shouldn't be over purchasing or under purchasing. At lowest overall cost. Now that could be debatable. Sometimes the lowest overall cost is not the right quality. And delivered and available on a timely basis. And I don't know if you're familiar with Price Costco and Price Smart. Sol Price, he was the founder of that organization. And this little paragraph here about the right quality and quantity in the Price Costco world, they would say they call this the six rights, basically: the right quality, quantity, the right price, in the right place at the right time, that kind of thing. And so that's probably where they got this from. Just want to share that little sidebar there. But basically, again, it's taxpayer money and it needs to be used efficiently, effectively, wisely. So there should be, and also there should be competition, as much competition as possible. And why is that? Competition leads to better pricing, right? If you are the only person selling something, you can sell it for whatever you want. But once there's a second person, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth selling pretty much the same thing, then you got to worry about what they're selling it for, and you need to adjust your pricing. And, again, this is our money. We are the taxpayers, and we want it spent as effectively and efficiently as possible. And so we want competition to lower pricing. And that competition needs to be open and fair. So those are the basic idea of procurement law. So just a little outline of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Guam procurement law for a little bit, and then some also the administrative rules and regulations related to procurement law. We'll talk about finding opportunities where you can find GovGuam opportunities. We're all GovGuam focused today. I know normally our webinars are federally focused, but today's all GovGuam. Sorry, some more people are coming in here. Let me just click. All right. We'll go through an actual IFB, which is an invitation for bid. You'll see how that looks, how they put it together, all the different forms that are involved, all the things you need to fill out if you want to respond to one, and then some unique items related to GovGuam procurement. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, let's go. So anybody can download the procurement law. It's on the col.guamcourts.gov website. This got updated, I'm not sure how long ago, but probably within the last year. They updated the website, made it more colorful, made it more graphic looking, easier to use, a little more user friendly. The previous website was really blocky. But basically, you can go here and find all the different GovCon laws. If you want the procurement law, you have to go to Title 5, which is Government Operations. And then when it opens up, you go to Division 1, Chapter 5, which is the procurement law. And when you click that, it'll just download basically, or it'll open a PDF that you could just download. And that's the entire procurement law in one PDF file. So it's all right there on one page. Pretty easy to find. So like I said, everyone's going to get a copy of this webinar and of course the recording or a link to the recording. So you'll have all these links and you'll be able to find all this stuff. And then there's the administrative rules and regulations, which are basically just they kind of repeat the procurement law, but then they add on to it. We'll talk about that a little more as we talk about the GAR as it's called. But that's also on the same website. It's Title 2, Division 4, and there's 14 chapters to it. And as you click on each one of those chapters, again, it opens up a PDF and you can download the PDF. So there's basically 14 PDFs that make up the government or the Guam administrative rules and regulations. So, okay. So where did GovGuam procurement law come from? Well, in the procurement law itself, basically in the first couple pages, it tells you it's a model procurement code approved by the American Bar Association in 1979. That's where it came from. So it's a model code, so it doesn't mean it's has everything in it. It's just like kind of like a template. And then you can add to it, take away from it, whatever you want to do to adjust it for your particular area. In this case, it'd be the territory of Guam, right? So, but that's where if you were wondering, like, I'm sorry, kind of jumped ahead here. If you're wondering where it all came from, that's where it started. So, and then there's a purpose of the GovGuam procurement law, and all these slides, or most of the slides, are going to have, if I'm referencing a GovGuam procurement law, on the bottom of the slide is going to have which section. That's so 5 GCA, that's the procurement law section, and then it's, I'm sorry, that's the chapter, and then it's going to be section 5001. So this kind of ties in with what the OPA was saying in his or I'm not sure who the OPA was at the time that drafted that, or the OPA's comments on that first slide. But um, one of the purposes, Guam procurement law needs to be simple, and it needs to be clarified and modernized. So that's what they're trying to do here. Increase public confidence, and the best way to do that is transparency. You got to be as transparent as possible. And I'll show you, we hear quite a bit of you hear in the news, I guess, lots of cases of protest and procurement appeals and things that went wrong. And it seems like it happens quite a lot. When we go through this webinar here, you're going to see that it actually really doesn't happen too often. And there are rules in place to increase public confidence via transparency. It's just, I don't know if people are taking advantage of the rules or trying to take advantage of the rules. But we'll talk about that a little more as we go along here. So it needs to be a fair and equitable treatment of all people, so all the bidders. Um, Increase the economy, maximize purchasing value of public funds. Again, more bang for the buck. So competition is what they're talking about. And that's again referenced in the next section here, broad-based competition, quality, integrity, and then public access. Again, that's the transparency portion I was talking about. So, all right. And then the purpose of the GAR, the Administrative Rules and Regulations, is to provide the policies and procedures. So the procurement law gets made, usually by the legislature. Some senator comes up with an idea. They hash it out with the other senators and they pass a law, it gets signed by the governor, and it comes into law. And then sometimes the laws are not as detailed as they need to be. It's just kind of like a framework. And so this is where the GAR comes in, and then the policies and procedures to put that law into effect are in the GAR. So that's basically why you have these rules and regulations. All right, so let's go. How is GovGuam procurement organized? It's divided basically into two sections. There's GSA and DPW, basically. I mean, that's as simple as I can make it. Of course, it gets a little more complicated, but according to the law, there's the GSA, the General Service Administration, and that's within the Department of Administration. The head of that organization is the Chief Procurement Officer for the island, the CPO. And the DOA director is the one who sets the minimum qualifications for the CPO. Now, the duties of the CPO, they're supposed to be the principal procurement officer for supplies and services. So all the supplies and services used by GovGuam, according to procurement law, and we'll see a little caveat here coming up soon, goes through GSA. And that's how it was decades ago. Of course, things have changed, but and they control the territorial supplies inventory. So they're supposed to be making sure we have the right supplies, the right quantities, in the right place, things like that. And they create the procedures to inspect, test, and accept supplies and services. They're the ones who got to make sure that, hey, we want these kind of tires for our vehicles. And so when those tires get delivered, they make sure those are the actual tires. But here's the big thing. They can delegate the authority to any GovGuam agency or official. So the procurement law says the CPO has the authority to purchase all the supplies and services. They're the chief procurement officer, but they can delegate that authority. And that has happened. That's why you see all these different agencies buying stuff because they've been delegated that authority to do it and they don't have to go through GSA. So that's where that comes in. The CPO also certifies the inventory revolving fund. So what's supposed to happen as these different agencies, if they're pulling from GSA and taking inventory from them, whatever supplies that GSA purchased, and a different agency, uses GSA to buy it, then they're supposed to basically not purchase it, but kind of reimburse GSA for taking that. And that's the revolving fund there. And then they got to respond to legislative inquiry. So CPO reports to the legislature. That happens, oversight hearings, things like that. Big note here, what about construction? That's where DPW comes in. The DPW director handles construction for procurement for the island. Now, of course, that could be delegated as well, and some different agencies do handle their own construction as well. So that does come into play. But that's the basic structure of how this works. All right. So how does GovGuam procure? How do they buy things, right? So they have these things known as methods of source selection. So there's different ways they can buy things, right? Now, obviously, this is not like the private sector, right? If a private sector company wants to buy desks and chairs and computers for the office, they just go to wherever any business they want and just buy it, right? Of course, they probably do some shopping around. They also want to get the best bang for their buck, but they can do whatever they want and buy wherever they want. Of course, government, a little different. You're using taxpayer money. They need to be buying the best products at the best price and the best quantity, right? Or I'm sorry, the right price and the right quantity, that kind of thing. So there are some rules in place for this. So what the GovGuam law says is all contracts shall be awarded using competitive sealed bidding. That's known as the invitation for bid. And we're going to talk about that in the next few slides. Except there are exceptions to this rule. So there are contracts that don't have to use the IFB as it's known. So one of the first exceptions is professional services. So if they want to need some doctor services, lawyer services, nursing services, whatever it is, any accounting services, any kind of professional service, they can use the RFP, which is a request for proposal. It's just a different method of purchasing. If it's a small purchase, and then they define what they mean by small purchase. So for the entire GovGuam, if it's less than $25,000 supplies and service, then that's a small purchase and they don't have to use IFB. They can just do an RFQ, which is a request for quote, meaning they can just put out, hey, we need a quote on this. And normally they just need to get 3 quotes. And once they get their 3 quotes, the lowest quote's going to win, basically, all else being equal. The interesting about the RFQ, on a side note too, is if you respond, so how they I'm not quite sure exactly how they're doing it now, but I used to work at JWS Refrigeration. This is back in the early 2000s. And so faxing was the way they would do it. And so they knew we were a refrigeration air conditioning company. And so anytime they're looking for air conditioners and they needed three quotes, they would send us fax over an RFQ saying, "Hey, can you quote on this?" Now, if you went back and said, shoot, we don't have this in stock, or it's going to take months to get it, or this is not what we sell, and you put no quote on it, you just respond to them and say no quote, that counts as one of their three quotes. So it is quite possible, even though there's need to get three quotes, if they get two no quotes and then just one actual real quote, they really only got one quote. But just a little side note on how that works there. Um, but going back to 25,000 for supplies and service, that is small purchases. For construction, if it's under 100,000, they can do the RFQ process. And if it's less than 250,000 for just the Department of Education and the hospital, and this is for buying supplies that are directly related to those kind of so education supplies or hospital supplies, those kinds of things. Those are they don't have to go through the IFB. They can use the small purchase or RFQ process. So that's what it is now. Now there is a bill, I believe, that passed recently, and the governor hasn't signed it yet. And it looks like it might get vetoed actually, because I think it's part of the budget bill. I'm not sure. And where they're looking to make it 250,000 for the entire government, all the agencies for the small purchases. So that's an idea yet. It's not in the law yet. So I'm just showing you what's in the law. But once that happens, if that happens and becomes a law, then of course we'll update our slides and we'll let everybody know about. But those are the basic small purchase requirements or exceptions to the rule here. And then of course, sole source, if there's only one supplier for what they want, they don't have to use the IFB. They can go to RFP or RFQ. And then emergency, of course, times of emergency, all the rules get thrown out the window basically. Well, I mean, there's some basic rules still in place. They still need to track things and make sure all the details are kept track of. And so emergency procurements, though, when that's like during COVID and things like that, during typhoons, they can basically forego the IFB route and do everything through RFQs. And then nonprofit corporation employing handicapped workers. So if that's something that's happening, I think that happens on the federal side. That happens for there's Ability One. So they run, I think, the supply stores on Anderson and Navy, and they do some other things as well. And so also with GovGuam, they have a little carve out exception to them. So those are the basic methods of source selection. IFB is the main one, but these are the exceptions. So let's look at IFB. So here are the guidelines on how to do an invitation for bid. So the GovGuam law, basically, the procurement law says the IFB needs to include three basic things in it. It's got to have a purchase description. So, okay, what do they want to buy? Which makes sense. That has to be in there, right? We need to know as vendors, what are we going to sell them? And the government needs to tell us clearly what they want to buy. There needs to be a wage determination in there. So there are certain minimum wages that need to be paid. Now, GovGuam does get a lot of federal funding, and when a procurement is federally funded, they usually need to follow the minimum wages, like from the Service Contract Act or the Davis-Bacon Act, which are a lot higher than actual minimum wages. So that wage determination needs to be included in the packet so you know what the minimum wages are for the people that are going to be working on this project, whatever it is. And then all the contract terms and conditions need to be listed so that if you do win the contract, you know upfront already what you need to comply with. So that all needs to be in the bid package, as it's known. The IFB needs to be publicly posted for the law. The law says a reasonable time. If you go to the GAR, then the rules and regulations, they tighten that up and they define reasonable time as at least 7 days before the due date. So there needs to be some advertising for the IFB. We'll talk about where that advertising is done in a moment here. The bids will then be opened publicly. So everyone who submits their bids, they gather you all in a room, they open it publicly. The bidder name and the bid amount is public record. Well, sometimes you don't go to the bid opening, but it is done publicly. Bids are accepted when evaluated using criteria in the IFB. So An IFB, you normally it's kind of like lowest price wins. There might be a few conditions in there, but normally, as long as you turned in all the paperwork, all your affidavits are up to date. We're going to talk about that as we go through an actual IFB coming up here. Um, and everything's correct, and you're responsible. You have the financial means to do this contract, then and you're the lowest price, you're probably going to win it. So that's the contract awarded to lowest responsible capable bidder right there. So that's how an IFB works. So here's some more on the publication requirements for GovGuam IFBs and RFPs. So whatever agency is buying it, they need to put the notice on their website. And then if it's supplies and service, it also needs to be on the GSA website. I have not verified if that's actually happening. There is also a section that was added to GovGuam law. I think this was in 2025 or maybe 2024, where they mentioned that the Office of Technology is supposed to build this procurement announcement website, and they do have something, and we're going to talk about that in a few slides down the road here. So just keep that in the back of your head. The DPW website is where all the construction solicitations, IFBs, RFPs should be posted. There should be no fees to download docs off the website. The docs need to be posted on the website for at least 180 days after award, so it needs to stay up there for a while. And they need to advise the bidder to register contact info with the agency. You see that pretty much on every single posting that I've seen. They always say, "Hey, if you want a copy of this, please give us your name, contact information, what company you with," and then they let you get the documents. Basically, that's pretty much how it works. Um, and then, but if you need physical copies and like you need to go into the office, let's say, I don't know, the hospital, Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, and they're doing some kind of IFB and maybe the website's down, or maybe not the website's down, maybe you actually need a physical copy or something, they can charge. That's when they can charge you a fee, or when you actually need a physical copy. So I've heard stories where people are being charged just to download things off the website. If that's happening, just know that is against the procurement law. There should be no fees to download documents off the website. So bring that to somebody's attention if that's happening. Now, here's a thing, bonding. This is probably the biggie with Government Procurement, bonding. Um, So any IFB that's over 25,000, remember that is the small purchased threshold, requires a bid bond. Before I continue, something popped in the chat. Let me check the chat here. Does it mean it always has to be the lowest bidder that wins, or is a discretion given? I'm sorry, I can't read the rest of the. Or is it a discretion given all documents are in line? Yeah. So, I think what the first thing to do is to make sure you have all the documents that you're supposed to have, everything signed, notarized, everything is correct, and you are a responsible bidder. And so once you met that definition of responsible, then they'll look at the price, and if you are the lowest, now I can't say 100% of the time, but in general, maybe 99% of the time, you will be the winner. Yes. That's for IFBs now. We're talking IFBs. Yeah. That's how the IFB process. So, let's go back to now the bid bond here. If you want to participate in GovGuam contracting on an IFB that's over the small purchase threshold, then it's going to require a bid bond. This is something I don't know, maybe not unique to GovGuam, maybe other states do it, but it is definitely not done in the federal system. You don't have to put up a bid bond. And the bid bond is 15% of the bid price. So if you were going to bid on something that was going to be $1 million, let's say, you're going to have to put up $150,000. And so hopefully you have a bonding company, which makes it a lot easier that you've been working with, and they can just write the bond and basically for you, and they'll charge you a fee. Usually it's like 2 to 3%. Or if not, you can do a cashier's check, which is something they'll accept. But basically, you got to come up with the bid bond. It's something that, in my opinion, I'm just going to go off on a little tangent here, give you my opinion. I don't like it. I wish they wouldn't do it. Um, I think their reasoning might be that they do this to make sure you have some skin in the game when you're bidding on something. But, it's not done in the federal system with bid bonding. Of course, there are performance and payment bonds in the federal system, but not just to bid on something. And so that is goes against, to me, the spirit of the law where it says they want to foster competition. But it's been talked about, the legislature's been talked about removing that requirement. I don't know if they're ever going to do it, but that's the way it is right now. For military projects, RFP requires bid bond most of the time. Okay. Um, that's news to me. I haven't seen that. Normally, when you submit your proposal, there's no bid bond. You just submit your proposal, but okay. Um, So a bid bond becomes the performance bond for supplies and services. And then there's a 100% performance payment bond required for construction. So that's the bonding for GovGuam contracts or GovGuam contracting. All right. We hear a lot about protests and procurement appeals. So protests and procurement appeals are two different things, basically, and we'll kind of go through how this process works. Sorry, something keeps popping in the chat here. Let me check this real quick. So the importance of the bid bond is that if the winning contractor does not proceed with the contract, the client can recover the RFP cost. Sure. Okay. Well, maybe we'll save that till the end when we do some questions and stuff. Okay, so protests and procurement appeals. Um, so basically, if there is a IFB out, let's say it's released and something went wrong, maybe, or you notice something, or maybe you think the requirements aren't right, or you put in a bid and you weren't selected, whatever it is, you have the opportunity to protest, and you can do that. So the law talks about protests and how that all works and what the requirements are. So 14 days of knowing the facts is when you are allowed to submit your written protest to the agency. So let's use our hospital example. We'll keep going with that. If you want to protest something at the hospital, within 2 weeks of knowing whatever it is for the reason that you're protesting, that's when you got to submit your written protest to the hospital. And the hospital needs to uh, look at it. And then they have to decide if they're going to deny your protest or basically accept your protest and then change and fix whatever they did wrong. So that's their choice, and they have to just make that decision promptly in the law. They don't have a timeline on that. And then when you go to the rules and regulations and you say, all right, what do they mean by promptly? The rules and regulations just say as expeditiously as possible. So, okay. So quickly, hopefully, less than 2 weeks, I would hope they would come back and say, all right, we deny your protest or we sustain your protest, right? Now, as the protest is going on, there's an automatic stay in place, which means no work is being done. No, there's no like second place winner that's being selected or anything like that. It just everything stops. Everything is frozen until we get this sorted out. So, after their denial, which is usually what happens, protests more than 50% of the time get denied. Then you, as the aggrieved bidder, basically have 15 days to decide, all right, do I want to keep fighting this? So I could take it to the public auditor and do a procurement appeal, or I can go to court, file a court case, whatever you want to do, right? So you have basically another 2 weeks to decide if you want to do that or not. If you decided to take it to the public auditor, that's known as a procurement appeal. And then you go through a process, and there's a flow chart we're going to take a look at here shortly of how that works. And then whatever the public auditor's decision at the end of all this, that's final. Although, if you don't agree, you can also, again, take it to court. So sustained procurement appeal, you're entitled to compensation for some aspects of it, not for everything, but for some aspects. So that's basically how it works. You protest to the agency usually will deny your protest. It's rare that they agree with you and admit to doing something wrong. And so then you go have a decision to make of whether you want to take it to the public auditor. And that's even though some people say keep calling it a protest, it's not. Now it's called a procurement appeal because you're appealing the denial of your protest is what you're doing. Okay. So let's look at the flow chart real quick. Or before I jump to that, I did see something pop in the chat. Just check that. Okay. I don't know where it went. Oh, there's something else here. Okay. Sorry, my meeting chat screen is way different than it used to be, so I just got to get used to it. All right, let's take a look at the flow chart here, which I have somewhere. I'm going to jump over to, is it on the internet? Let me see. Yeah. So you should be seeing the procurement appeals flow chart right now. I'll give it a second to load up on your screens. So, basically, the purchasing agency issues notice of decision on your protest, right? That's where they basically deny your protest. And then you got to decide what you want to do. And so you got 15 days to figure that out. And then you file your notice. Um, if the filing's complete, they'll accept it. And then you kind of go down this, just follow this flow chart where it goes. So it's a nice little schedule here. It basically tells you how everything works. Then they have these hearings and what happens at the hearings. And then the timelines are all here. So you can see it can take a while, a couple months at least, for everything to be done. So, but that's the basic process of the procurement appeal. So I'll send everyone a copy of this so you can have a copy. Okay. Now, if you want to know more about procurement appeals and like what people have protested and how it turned out, they have a database, and you can go to the website at opaguam.org, and there's the link on the top of the screen here, and you can just look at these cases. And actually, I would highly suggest looking at these if you are in a situation where you think you might want to file a protest with the agency. Or even if you, let's say your protest was denied and now you want to file an appeal with the auditor, look at these cases. You can do a search for maybe try to do some similar keywords of what's happening in your case to see if something similar has happened. There's over 200 plus cases here that go back years and years and years. And you can see how those decisions turned out, and then you can decide. It gives you a better idea of if you are going to be successful or not with your procurement appeal. So. Okay. The OPA also puts out an annual report. This is the latest one from 2025. This is a calendar year 2025, not fiscal year. So, and you can also get it on their website. But in here, they talk about their procurement appeals. And so, in calendar year 2025, they had 9 procurement appeals. That's it. That is not a lot. Consider all the different hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of different contracts that were happening with GovGuam. So there was 9 procurement appeals. 5 were dismissed, 3 were stayed, and 1 was issued for 1 appeal. One had a decision, basically. And they talk about the different agencies involved. And then they talk about their timeline here, how they strive to resolve their appeals within 90 to 120 days from the time of filing, and then 30 to 60 days after the hearing. So it can take a little while. So, we always hear there's protests. Not really. And if there are, a lot of those protests get denied, and then people don't do the procurement appeal. They just go, oh, well, I got denied, and they leave it alone. So. OPA also puts a little note in here. They do this every year on their procurement appeal section, and it's really a really good note because it shows that vendors are scrutinizing the GovGuam procurement process. I mean, that's what a protest is, or to the agency. They're saying, hey, something went wrong with this process here, and I want people to know about it. And this is all public information. So, and of course, this kind of thing does help strengthen and improve the procurement process. So a protest, a procurement appeal is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it helps people see if there's a problem with a certain procurement law or a certain section of the law, maybe a certain rule and regulation, and then these protests help improve that. They do make a note that procurement appeals revealed that the need for further government procurement training. So what they're seeing then is probably what's happening is it's usually on the government side of things, record keeping, that kind of thing is not happening like the way it's supposed to according to the law. And so that's what they're getting from all these appeals. Hey, we need some more procurement training. And so we'll talk about procurement training here towards the end of this webinar. So, all right, record keeping. So this is in the law. So I hear quite a bit. You hear it in the news a lot, and you see all these opinion pieces being written by people who say the government needs to change the procurement law. They need to fix it. It's broken. It's not. The law is all there. It's just following the law. The law needs to be followed. All the rules are there, and this is straight. There's the sections right there on the bottom of the slide. These are all in the law. So the CPO, that's the Chief Procurement Officer, DPO Director, or agency head, because remember they can delegate their authority. They have to maintain a complete procurement record, and then they tell you what is supposed to be in that record. The date, the time, subject matter, names of participants in any meeting, phone meeting, webinar meeting, face-to-face meeting, lunch meeting, any meeting needs to be recorded, needs to be in the file. Communication log, all emails related to procurement should be there. Recordings of any pre-bid conferences, negotiations, any discussions needs to all be in the file. All submittals, all docs used to develop the bid specs should be there because, when the government says, hey, we want to buy, let's go back to these certain kind of tires for our vehicles. Well, how did they know what kind of tires they needed? How did they develop those specs? That all needs to be in there. And then the reason for the procurement. Why do we need that, right? And then the big thing here is, and I don't know if people are doing this, but you can. It is the law. It's in the law. It says any person. It doesn't say a bidder, an aggrieved bidder, someone involved with the procurement. It says any person, anybody on Guam can inspect, copy any portion of the record. So anybody, we all as, here on the island, we all could say, hey, I didn't like what's happening in this procurement. I want to see the record. And we can do that. And it shouldn't have to go through a FOIA request. If it is, that's wrong because it's right there in the law. Any person can inspect, copy any portion of the record. Some more on the record keeping. So there's supposed to be a form. Now, this is an old form. This is from like 2012. I don't know if they're still using it, but there's supposed to be a form which basically the procurement person is checking off all the boxes that they have the records of everything that are related to that procurement. Sole source emergency procurements. Now, remember, that's when you don't have to go through the IFB. You can use the small purchase things, and the record keeping is a little less. You don't have to have all the different requirements that I just showed you earlier. But you do need some basics for sole source and emergency procurements. So you need to have a record of the contractor's name, the amount, the type, the list of what was purchased, and a detailed justification report. Has to be given to the legislature monthly. Don't know if that's happening. I'm pretty sure that's not happening, but that's in the law. The legislature is supposed to get a monthly report on any sole source and emergency procurements. That's happening. So the rules are there. The law is there. It just needs to be followed. So there was a site. I was debating whether to take this slide out or not because its site's been down for, I don't know, 3 years already. But basically, there used to be a site, going back to, if I go back one slide, to this sole source emergency procurements where you can see the contractor's names, amount, type. Well, there used to be a site where they did that for all the procurements. And so you could see all the different contracts. Actually, this is the last time this site was up, so it's more than 4 years already. February 1, 2022, yeah. If you go to this site now, it'll say something like this site is not down but closed or available or something like that, whatever. But basically, this is where you were supposed to, the government was supposed to put their list of who won contracts, basically, for Gov Guam. And I don't believe there is another site that I've seen yet. I Maybe a year ago, I did follow up with DOA to see if they're ever going to do another site. And nobody had a concrete answer. In fact, they kind of weren't even aware of this site. So I don't know who was putting this site together. It might not have been under DOA. But there was a site where you could see a contract award information, but apparently there is no longer a site. So, and this section 10306 comes actually ironically, from the Sunshine Act portion of the law. It's not even in the procurement section it's not in the procurement law section of the Guam Code Annotated. It's in the Sunshine Act. So, okay. So where do you find GovGuam IFBs and RFPs? We're going to take a look at notices.guam.gov in a second here, and some of these other places as well. But that is the public notice portal. We're going to take a look at that and show you how to use it. And then there's the Daily Post, the PDN. They have their websites. Guam Contractors Association, if you are a contractor, you really should be a part of that organization. They do every day. I get an email from them about a different RFPs and IFPs that are happening at different GovGuam agencies. So, and then our website as well. Now, honestly, I haven't checked this in a while to see if these links are still active. But if you go to our website and go to the resources section and then the local section, there are links to certain GovGuam agencies and their IFBs and RFPs. So if you do check it out and you see some broken links, please let us know. But I will check those over the next few weeks here just to make sure they're correct. But let's take a look at we're going to look at let's look at the post, the PDN, and then the public notices portal. So, and that was, remember, I said to keep that in the back of your head. There was a portal that we should be looking at. That's what I was talking about. So let's see, which one is this? This is the post. So this is the Guam Daily Post. If you click that link that I'm going to send to you, when I send everybody copy this, you will see that there is a list of different notices here. Some are IFPs, some are RFPs, some are IFBs, some are bids, some are not. It's just various different kinds of notices. So, if you go to the PDN, let me just click over to that. Again, notices. That was a board meeting, public meeting. Here's an IFB that's there. So different things are on in no particular order, which makes it kind of hard to use. So it's probably best, I would say, to go to the GovGuam site here, the public notices portal. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This was the thing that was added in the law a couple years ago where the Office of Technology was supposed to put a portal together, and they did. Now this thing is set to look at all notices, all different kinds of notices. So if you're on this website, what you want to do is go to Notice Topics here and change this and select what you want to see. And we want to see IFBs, so we'll check IFBs. And then we also want to see RFPs, request for proposals, right? And then we're just going to click Use Selected Filter, and then that's all we'll see. We won't see all this other job announcements and press releases and things like that. So we're going to click Use Selected Filter, and now it filtered it all out. And now we can just go through here and look at all the different RFPs and IFPs that are happening with GovGuam. So here's one for Guam Power. Here's one for GEDA, Guam Economic Development Authority. Here's one for GSA. Another GSA. Here's the OPA. Now, if you go through here and look through all of them, this is interesting. That's a charter school, I think. So cool. Okay. GCC, airport, and then you can just go and click through the pages here. But not every GovGuam agency is using this portal. So if you are selling to some of maybe the smaller agencies, I don't believe, I don't know, let's go to page 2 here, but I don't think like Mayor's Council maybe is not on here. Here's Guam Memorial, GSA, DOC, Public Works, Guam Election Commission. So there might be, that there may be a few of Guam agencies, maybe some of the smaller agencies that are not using this portal. So you are just going to have to go to their actual website to see what kind of things they got going on. So that makes it a little more difficult. But this is a lot better than it was before. This portal is great because before there was no portal and you literally had to go to every agency's own website Even though the law says, right, all supplies and services should be on GSA's website. But once they delegated that authority to those agencies where they can purchase on their own, they also started posting the notices on their own and not on their own websites and not on GSA websites or DPW for construction. So, but this is a good step in the right direction here. Have this portal now. Hopefully, they make it mandatory that all GovGuam agencies basically use this website to do it. Uh, but hopefully, that happens soon. So check this website if you're looking for GovGuam opportunities. Okay. So let's look at the standard organization of a GovGuam invitation for bid. So there's a special reminder notice, which usually happens. Now, these are not everything, but these are the most common things you'll see in an IFB, an invitation for bid. You got to acknowledge that you received it. There's a special provisions bid bond, and we're going to go through an actual IFB, and you'll see most of these. I don't believe, oh, no, I think actually maybe all of these will be in the one we're looking at. There's some affidavits you need to get filled out. Affidavit of ownership, non-collusion, no gratuity. So basically saying, hey, we're not doing any bad things, right? If you're familiar with federal contracting, you do that in SAM, right? There's in SAM, there's a section called representations and certifications. And that's where you basically attest, hey, we're not colluding with anybody. There's no gratuities. We're following the ethical standards, right? Nobody's been indicted. Nobody's in jail, that kind of thing. That's all something you attest to. Now, of course, with the federal system, it's all in your SAM. So you don't have to attest to that on every single opportunity you put a proposal in. But here, GovGuam, there is no central database like that of GovGuam vendors. So you have to do this for every opportunity that you bid on. You have to make sure you have these affidavits. So just a little hint on these. Most of them need to be notarized. Usually the notarized signature, the notary document is good for 30 days. So, if you have an affidavit of ownership, just keep that one for 30 days and then do another one the next 30 days. So then, you have it on file. You can use it in multiple different government opportunities and different IFBs and things like that. So just a little tip there on the affidavits. Compliance with wage determinations, contingent fees, restrictions against sex offenders. Talk about that in a second here. General terms and conditions, sealed bids, and then the specs. So let's go through an actual IFB so you can see this in real life, how it looks. So I think this might be active right now. This is a silicone roof coating that I think GSA is purchasing this. So let's go look at that actual IFB. Hopefully it's loaded up somewhere. I think it's here in my PDFs. Not there, but that'll be later. So, all right. So here's the IFB. So this is a typical IFB. Basically, let's go to the first page, probably best. So this is coming from, yeah, GSA. So they're looking for some silicone roof coating, and they tell you when everything's due, 10 a.m. August 14th. Who's in charge, basically, the acting chief procurement officer. And then they have the special reminder thing. Okay, so this always needs to be in there, the little special reminders. And you need to sign this and return it with your bid package, basically. It says right there, reminder must be signed and returned in the bid envelope. Failure to comply may cause disqualification. That's part of the responsible bidder, right? Or I'm sorry, responsive. There's responsive and responsible. Responsive, you filled out the form. Responsible, you show you have the ability to do the work. So there's your acknowledgement receipt. So yes, we did receive the form. So okay, and then you have your form and contract. So this is this you don't fill out this part down here because it tells you right there, do not sign unless directed. So, but basically, then they go through all the different rules and regulations that are in place for this bid, and then different. This is the contract basically, is what they're showing you here, right? Because that in an IFB, remember one of the three things they need to have is the contract terms and conditions, and then they tell you what you need to comply with here. So all the ones that have an X in it are going to be required in this bid. And you'll see some blank ones. Not everything will be X'd. So, okay. And we'll scroll down here. Sorry for all the scrolling. It's only 46 pages. You notice we haven't seen anything about what they want to purchase yet. These are all the rules and regulations, basically. So I'm going to go down here. I just want to get to the affidavits and stuff to show you what they look like. So here's the instructions, sealed bid instructions. You'll be provided one form. You got to prepare your bids, blah, 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 blah. And then they tell you how to submission right here. Submitted in duplicate, one original, one copy, shall be enclosed a sealed envelope addressed to the offer, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. And then again, sorry for all the scrolling. I should have marked the page numbers, but you see there's a lot of rules and regulations you need to comply with. But here we go. So there's a local procurement preference. And I'm going to talk about that on the next slide, I believe, in the next couple of slides. So I'm just kind of going to skip through this. But if you want to get the local procurement preference, there are some rules in place, and the rules will be on the next slide coming up. But basically, fill that out. There is a service-disabled procurement preference, service-disabled veteran. We'll talk about that, like I said, when I get to the actual slide. There's a woman-owned as well. I'll talk about that when I get to the actual slide. Here's the bid bond. So if you're using a bonding company, they fill this out for you. If you're not using cashier's check or something like that, you're going to have to fill this out. All right, then you have your affidavits now. So these are all your attestations that we are a good company and we're not doing anything wrong. So you're disclosing your ownership, who owns the company. There's no conflicts of interest and things like that. So you got to fill this form out. And I believe this needs to be notarized as well. You can see there's a lot of documentation we got to do here for this bid for roof coating, basically. Yeah, this is notarized. Yep. Okay. Non-collusion. So we have to have an affidavit saying, hey, we're not colluding anyone. We're not sitting in a room setting prices and saying, okay, I'm going for this bid. You go for that bid. I'll let you have this one. I'll get this one, that kind of thing. That's not happening. Okay. Again, it's got to be notarized. There's no gratuities or kickbacks, right? The contracting office is not paying you any money. There's no side deals going on. So, okay. You're following ethical standards. Okay. You're complying with the wage determination. And so that's what you got to fill out here. And then there'll be a list of the wage determinations right here. Um, just on a side note, if they don't include the wage determination, which I rarely see, they almost always, the wage determination is in there. Or sometimes they have a one that's not up to date. This looks like it's up to date, but they might have an older one, and the newer ones or the wage determinations are all at sam.gov. So if you go to sam.gov and go to the wage determination section, even though I know this is local and that's federal, that's where it comes from. These come from the federal government. So you can type in Guam as a keyword and then look for the wage determinations and find the newest one. So if you have an older one listed here, you might want to reach out to the office and go, hey, are we supposed to be using that older one or do you want to use the new one? That happens sometimes. So I'm just going to go through this real quick because there's a lot of pages of this wage determination that we don't need to see. But that's basically the minimum wages. So we're already on page 42 of this, and we still don't know what we're selling, what they want to buy. Well, we have an idea, but here's the affidavit of contingent fees. There's no contingent fees thing going on. You're not paying anybody. In case we win, you get a percentage of this. That's nothing like that going on. Now the sex offenders. So what this is basically saying is sex offenders are not allowed on Guam property, right? So um, that doesn't mean you can't have a sex offender in your company. It just means that person is not going to be able to step on to Guam property for the purposes of whatever this is. So let's say it's selling desks and chairs, or in this case, it's the silicone roof coating. So if this sex offender guy in your company or person in your company um, is a delivery driver, they're not going to be able to drive onto the government property and deliver this stuff. You're going to have someone else in the company do that, basically, is what this is saying. So, no lobbying going on. This is, you don't see this very often, but it's there. Okay. And now we've got one page left, and there it is. That's the actual bid form where you put the pricing for the product that they want. And then they give you all the specs here and what they want. Also, if you go in here and you see the specs and something looks off, like why is this spec like that? Or you notice, hey man, there's only one kind of roof coating that can meet this spec. That could be grounds for an issue, possible protest, saying, hey, was this IFB written for a particular vendor? Is that possible? That does happen from time to time. So if that is happening, you see something here that doesn't look right, let them know. Okay. So that's the basic IFB. All right, let's look at some of these different things that were mentioned in those affidavits. So there's the local procurement policy. So this is in the GovGuam law and 5 GCA 5008. But basically, all supplies and services shall be made from among businesses licensed to do business on Guam and that maintain an office or other facility in Guam. So if you're doing, at least one of these things, then you'll get the local procurement preference. So if you're a manufacturer, you need to be adding at least 25% of value to whatever product it is you're manufacturing. You've got to be using U.S. workers. Or you got to have inventory of at least 50% of the items solicited. So you're in the business of selling silicone roof coating. Well, you got to have at least half those items in stock to consider local procurement preference. Or if maybe that's not the type of roof coating that you usually carry in your supply, you got an inventory of $150,000 of similar items, right? So they just want to show that you are a vendor that's selling this, you maintain stock of something similar in Guam. Or if you're in the service business, if it was a service type of procurement, you have at least 95% U.S. workers. Or, and in this case, for off-island purchases, which is rare, but the government can purchase off-island as long as once the cost of that supply item lands on Guam and you include the shipping and everything, it's got to be less than 85% of the local cost. So if that's the case, then they can do off-island purchases. So that's in the procurement law. There's also a preference for service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. So basically, it's a 5% preference. So services. So if this, let's say there's the bid here for the roof coatings going on, and we're just going to use smaller numbers to make it easy to digest. But basically, let's say it's $100, but the service disabled veterans bid is $105. They will still be considered the lowest price because they get a 5% benefit, basically. And now this is not for professional services or construction. It's only supplies and non-professional services. They got to be at least owned 51% by service-disabled veterans. Got to be located, licensed in Guam, the business. They have to be in business for at least 3 years because they have to file taxes for 3 years. Then they got to submit their DD 214 and their award letter from the VA with every bid package. They got to include that in there. Notice one big thing it does not say in here. It does not say you need to be certified by the SBA as a service to a veteran-owned business. It does not say that. So you don't. Unfortunately for the women-owned, that's not the case. For the women-owned preference, um, again, same kind of thing, 5% price advantage. So $100. If they bid 105, they are the lowest bidder. And then the rules are they got to be at least 51% owned by women, must be located licensed in Guam, same thing, file taxes for 3 years, but they must be certified by the SBA. That's in the law. So, and then they got to submit all their proof with the bid. Let's look at the chat here. I agree with the bid bond, that statement. Bid bond limits the small business. Most of us cannot afford to put 50%. This needs to be changed. Yes, I agree. 100%. I'm on your side on that. Training. Now, we did see in the OPA, they did say that all those procurement appeals that they get, which aren't a lot every year, there was what, 9, right? So that's not really a lot. But they kind of show that there needs to be better training for procurement personnel in GovGuam. And so there is a procurement program for GovGuam procurement personnel. GCC runs that program. It's 18 credit hours. It started way back in 2016, and it's basically a requirement. So for 10 years already, that Guam procurement personnel need to take this procurement program before they can participate in an agency procurement. Now, I know some procurement personnel in certain agencies are actually doing their job before they complete this training. And that's happens usually because there's just shortage of people in the procurement departments in the various agencies. So, I mean, what are you going to do there, right? So that is happening, but there is a training program. It is in place, and they are required to take it. So we can assist GCC with the training program as well. However, I've never been approached by GCC to assist. So if you want to know how to get involved for the Government of Guam agencies, if anybody on this webinar is in a Gov Guam agency, needs to get the procurement training, I think. Regular people can take this as well. I'm not sure though. I know I took it. Well, this was years ago, so I don't know if they've changed the law or not, or changed the rules. But here you go. These are the modules. They tell you when what dates they're happening, and then if you want to, there's the website where you can register, or you can just call them or email them. All right. And then I want to share this. This is going to be one of our last slides. We're coming towards the end here, but some things never change. So as part of that procurement training, when I took it years and years ago with John Brown was the one who put it together. He put this primer out. This is a huge document. I think it's like more than 300 pages, probably like 500 pages. I don't know. It's a huge document. But he he uses a nice little story in here how shows how GovGuam procurement has been running a certain way for a long time. So we're going to take a look at this little story here. So let me jump over to that PDF. Let's see, is this it? Yeah, here we go. So procurement lore or procurement law. So the story starts on page 13. So let me just jump to page 13. But this is a good primer you can use. 370 pages there. Okay, there we go. Let me make this a little bigger, maybe. Yeah, okay. So this is an actual procurement that happened a long time ago. Um, so there was a problem in 1876. So what is that? 150 years ago. Um, uh, and so it lays out the problem here in this top paragraph. Spain's forcible introduction to the islands of hundreds of political other criminal deportees from Spain, a typhoon, drought. So basically, there was a food shortage going on in Saipan. So there's a famine going on in Saipan. So in a few days, they would literally have nothing to eat. So in Guam, they said, "Hey, we need to help these guys out. So we need to procure some stuff and send it over to Saipan." So the governor said, "All right, let's purchase all the rice we can, and we'll send it to Saipan as soon as possible." So of course, there's legal procedures. Government procurement was going on even 150 years ago. There's things they had to follow. So they had to have a free and open auction, which is very, very similar to the bid opening at an IFB. Um, so they had to do that. They had to have a prominent display of a notice announcing the public auction in the busiest areas of the capital. And so that is this pretty much similar to putting an advertisement out or putting a notice out on a website. This back then they did it with a town crier for 3 days, the guy with the bell and the board and go and say, "Hey, hear ye, hear ye. We got this public auction coming up." And then the conditions of the auction. So they tell you, okay, what do we want? We want dry rice. It's got to be free of dust, preferably from the last harvest. So we don't want super old rice. And then there's a minimum quantity, 10, and I still don't know how to pronounce that word, cavanas, something like that. And it needs to be delivered. So they tell you where they want it delivered to the tribunal within 48 hours. So this is an emergency procurement, right? And then guaranteed payment on the day after delivery. Now, that does not happen anymore. The payment takes a little longer now in GovQuam. The auction was held at the government offices. Again, that's like the IFB process. Bids were submitted not in writing but vocally. So everyone just yelled out their bid basically when it was their turn, and everyone offered the same bid. So You can imagine there was no non-collusion affidavit back then. But it's just interesting that okay, what's going on? Pretty much the same way of purchasing was going on back then. So, emergency, competitive, sole source, specifications, delivery times, public notice, collusion, responsive, responsible bidders, all have been a familiar part of Guam procurement history. So, some things change, obviously. We've got rules now in place to hopefully stop that collusion going on. But a lot of things still remain the same, right? We have the announcement that needs to be a public notice out there. The opening of the bids is the same, pretty much. So, pretty interesting. All right, back to the PowerPoint, and I think that's it. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. Oops, I'm going to stop the share. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Okay, no questions. All right. That's easy enough. Well, there are no questions. Well, I do want to say something here about I'm looking at who's on the screen here. Yeah, so I think we know most everybody, but iPhone could be anybody. And 003, not sure who you are. Please let us know in the chat who you are so we can make sure we get an email copy of this presentation to you. Other than that, next week we got CMMC, I believe, coming up, cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about there was a big thing going on with CMMC. They basically put it on pause, or a certain part of CMMC is on pause.
Morris,
Yeah.
sorry. Uh, I heard a lot that the payment for GovGuam is delayed, not as prompt as as the military. Is that true?
So it depends. Certain agencies are better than others. So in general, in the federal system, you'll get paid, 30 days normally.
Yeah,
Um,
once we submit our billing and it's certified correct, then
Correct. Yeah, yeah. And GovGuam, some agencies can do that. They do that. But some agencies are further behind. Some agencies take months and months, so it depends. Yeah.
yeah, I'm specifically interested with the DPW. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know which specific agencies. Yeah,
okay, thank you.
sure. So, next week, CMMC, and it's going to be on Friday next week, not Thursday, because we have the big Guam Industry Forum, which is going to be, I think that's Wednesday and Thursday, right? So,
Yeah, it's 28, 29, 30, I think.
okay, so I don't know, is that Wednesday, Thursday? I think 28
Yeah,
is just
yeah,
like a registration day. It doesn't really.
yeah. So 20, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, so if you haven't signed up for that, I think it's guamindustryforum.com, or you can go to the SAME site, SAME Guam, and they can direct you to where to sign up. There is a fee to attend. I'm not sure if it's all sold out or not, so you might want to check the website. Um, but that's basically where you can meet a lot of people, a lot of large businesses, a lot of small businesses. There'll be vendors there with stuff on display, all related to the basically the buildup and what's happening with the Marine Corps base and all the investment being happening here from the federal government. So
So next week it will be about CMMC.
yeah, so next week our webinar on Friday will be about CMMC, cybersecurity, basically, and we'll talk about the delay or not delay, the basically they put a halt to phase two. And I think a lot of people are confusing phase two with level two, two different things. And so we'll talk about that. And then, of course, what you still need to be doing as a federal contractor to comply with practicing good, safe cybersecurity. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep. All right. So that'll be next Friday, 10 o'clock. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.